Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Great Shouts. Every fortnight, we come together. Somebody in the community presents on a particular topic, and then for 15-20 minutes. And then at the end of the session, we get to ask and grill them on questions. I'm your host. I'm Ed Davidson. I'm a fractional head of marketing. And this fortnight, we've got Philippa Kite, who's going to be discussing all things call tracking. So, Philippa, if you want to share your screen and get going, that would be great.
Cool. I think I am sharing my screen. Is it coming up?
Yeah, we've got it there now.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you for inviting me today, Ed. It's lovely to be able to speak to everybody all about my favourite subject, which is obviously call tracking. So I'm going to be running through a couple of bits today. Why have call tracking in the first place? How does it work? Reporting, and then a couple of results that we've seen from some of our customers. So I work at Infinity, which is a leading call tracking provider. So we have customers across the board. We have B2B customers, we have B2C customers, insurance, travel, you name it, we kind of have it on our books. So why use call tracking in the first place? So for a lot of businesses, phone calls are still a huge important part of the customer journey, and being able to understand what's driving your sales calls really does help optimize end-to-end customer experience. Call tracking enables you to see which campaigns, channels, keywords people are using that make prospects pick up the phone and convert. And having this information makes it much easier for you guys to be able to sell more, streamline any operational budgets, and ultimately optimize your marketing budgets, because you can really start to understand what campaigns are working and what are driving phone calls and what are driving good phone calls versus the ones that are out there and not working. So call tracking can obviously, there's a huge marketing use case, but there is also sales, operations, and contact centers that use call tracking in different ways as well. So how does it actually kind of work? So we have kind of two kind of versions of call tracking. We have basic call tracking, which essentially just works by allocating a phone number to a source. A lot of you are probably already doing that in some way, shape, or form. At Infinity, we call these kind of fixed numbers. So these are numbers that you might use in any out-of-home activity, in your DMs, in your leaflets, etc. And essentially, when somebody phones one of those numbers, we can tell you, yeah, that was a phone call that came through that particular DM. Visitor call tracking provider, call tracking, however, provides a much clearer vision of the full digital journey that leads to that call. So you see all the interactions within your site across all visits. So that's your sources, so where somebody has come in from, the keyword that they've used, the channel that they've used. That can be SEO, that can be your paid search activity, that can be Facebook, it can be Instagram, it can be any of the digital channels that you guys are using, and what's happened kind of before the customer picks up the phone. So at Infinity, we call these dynamic numbers. But how does it actually work? I can hear you all screaming at me. So if we think about kind of today, hopefully you'll go away, you'll be interested in call tracking. So you might go online and you might search call tracking provider. Obviously, Infinity will come up as one of the options there, and you'll either click on one of our ads or you will click through our Google search listing. So what will happen then is you'll then be presented with our site, and you will land on our landing page. And you can see, I've highlighted it down the bottom there, that you would be presented with a number to give us a call on. This number would be unique to you for the duration of your session. And what you could also do, you might not necessarily phone us straight away. You might go straight and look at how much we cost. So therefore, when you went on our pricing page, you would also be receiving the same number that you would see on that first page, because that is a unique number to you as a visitor, which enables us to track your full customer journey. So what that really looks like from a reporting point of view, and how it kind of technically works, is that it's all done through a JavaScript, which is deployed on your site. The user accepts local storage in the same way that they would accept cookies that they are presented with on the site. Each user is then given a unique visitor ID. A dynamic number is then presented to that user, and then we gather all of that visitor level data and provide you with a dynamic number. that we then feed all of that into our hub, and then that starts to give you, like, this is just one example of one report that we're able to provide, which is just all channel analysis. So you can see here, like, which calls are coming through paid search, which are coming through organic, which are coming through direct, and it starts to give you that information. You can go much more granular with your reporting as well. We can give you keyword information, exactly what keyword somebody's searched in order before they phoned you. We can give you ad group information. It goes very granular. In this particular view, you can also see like hourly traffic, because the data that we provide isn't necessarily all just marketing. As I said, it's operational as well. So if we think about how what we kind of do with that data, there's a couple of ways that we kind of work with the data. So we push it out into any analytics platform. So you can see it in your GA4, you can see it in your Google Ads. We also are able to push it out into any of your CRM systems that you're using. And we can also use things like Optimizely, etc., and any optimization platforms that you're using. So we can essentially start to integrate this data kind of in lots of different areas wherever you guys are viewing your data, to allow you to start being able to stitch that full kind of journey together. What we do here at Infinity is kind of split it in between three things. So obviously the call tracking is the first part, but we don't kind of stop there. We also have a look at what's going on during the call and then what happens after the call. So it's great that we can tell you, you received X amount of calls through your paid search activity. But then we do, the best way that we work with our customers is by also integrating some kind of CRM into that as well. So asking you guys basically to tell us what happened on that call, whether it was a good call or a bad call. And then what you can then do with that information is push it back through to Google Ads and say, okay, these are all the calls that we had through paid search. These are the outcomes from those calls. These are the good calls that we got. So therefore we want to go and find more people like that. And that's kind of how we can really help to support with that optimization piece and help reduce your CPA. We also offer like a speech analytics, conversation analytics platform, which basically records the call as it's happening, and then we can do some keyword spotting on that as well. So I guess my point here is that call tracking doesn't stop with just being able to give you that more marketing source information. It is the full end-to-end product. So just to give you a couple of ideas as to how kind of our customers are using it, these are a couple of case studies that we've kind of put together. So the first one here is the Telegraph. So the Telegraph send calls to their partners, but they had no visibility on whether those calls were becoming sales or not. So they use conversation analytics to help identify when like a payment or keyword has been said on a call. They can then log that lead to that partner, and then they can then basically make a business decision as to which partners are working best for them, which are not. They were also able to use a visitor level tracking to be able to understand the content that somebody is kind of having a look at before making a call with the Telegraph, because we were able to give that full view of the customer journey and the visitor journey, because we captured that information as part of our kind of cookie drop. And yeah, the main thing, as I said, was with regards to the partners, being able to confirm with their partners which ones were working best for them. And then we have Ramsay, who's the healthcare provider that we work with. So for them, marketing efficiency is absolutely key, as it is for a lot of people. And they really needed to understand which marketing leads led to calls and bookings. So they use the call intelligence to be able to show the full user journey. They can go back to their agency and say, these are the keywords that are working, these are the ad groups that are working, and these are the ones that we should potentially turn off or optimize in some way. They're also able to kind of use our segmentation tool to be able to have a look at location, specific calls that are coming through location, and any specific treatments that they're looking to push. And ultimately, they've got a lot of hospitals across the country, so they're able to centralize all their data in one place. And then we have On Track. So again, they needed to ensure that the PPC activity that they were running was targeted to those who were most likely to convert. So the Infinity data was able to provide that information, because again, we could show them which keywords and which activity was working and which wasn't working, and then they could massively eliminate any waste and spend that they were using. They also used our missed call feature, so they were able to see when they're most likely to be able to miss a call, and were able to slightly amend their call center hours, etc., to be able to do so. And we were able to connect to their telephony system and their CRM system, which meant that we were able to highlight to the agent on the phone exactly where that caller had come from, and ensure that they were basically optimizing against that information as well. We've got loads of other case studies, so if anybody wants to email me after this, then please do so, and I can share some more information. And that is actually it. So I didn't want to go too far into it because I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions, and it is quite a technical product. But yeah, open the floor to any questions or any thoughts at all.
Great, thanks, Philippa. I've used call tracking with a number of different clients, and it's like super powerful to be able to be used to be able to get analysis of where spend is working and kind of got the results from it. So I think it's really useful, and it certainly needs to be considered any time you've got the potential for customers to pick up the phone and contact us or contact you. And I think in a lot of instances that provides a more of a engaging kind of representation or engaging conversation with a potential customer rather than just be completing online. So I think it's really useful. I suppose in terms of like questions, Philippa, so we've had discussions about this. Is the software, in terms of how Infinity works, is it based mainly on kind of last click interactions? So I think there may be a whole load of touch points that you'd have with a user or a prospect before they convert. Is it is there that limitation to call tracking, or is there any kind of ways that you're thinking about expanding that out to be able to track things earlier in the journey?
So we do capture the full user journey. So if you have multiple callers coming through, then we would stitch those together. But yeah, you're absolutely right. At the moment, we would allocate the conversion to that last call or that last kind of interaction. So I guess we provide the information and we can push that out into Google Ads however people want to view it, and then it's whatever kind of optimization tool you're using at that end that can then have a look at the attribution. We do capture it all. So we have, obviously people don't just phone up for the first time and have a conversation and convert. They might go away, think about it, and then come back through again. And we are able to provide that information in the full marketing kind of source information that we have.
Do you find that how are companies kind of weighting those kind of interactions that they have? Are they kind of suggesting that the last interaction is the most important for them? Or is it the kind of first interaction where they may pick up the phone, speak to somebody, but they may convert online or through a different source? What are you kind of seeing there?
It depends. It totally depends on the business. I think we kind of, we provide the data and allow them to be able to analyze it in the way that they see fit, depending on what they're looking at. So if they're looking at conversions, or if they're looking at how long someone takes to convert, as an example, they might take the Infinity data and have a look at that as well. But we do as much because as soon as our cookie kind of, or our code hits you, when you then come back through as a returning visitor, we do recognize you, so we are able to stitch that together.
Makes sense. And is there any kind of limitations you're seeing at the moment if people are rejecting cookies, which means that the phone numbers aren't loading? Go on. Yeah,
so we do have essentially, it depends how you've added our code to the site and how you've viewed it in your analytics. It depends. We have some customers who kind of don't put us in kind of whatever the vital bucket is, in which case, they do see quite a few people not accepting the cookies, and therefore we're unable to track them. In that example, we would always just recommend that you put an Infinity kind of fixed number on your site, so we can still give you overall call volume, but we're unable to give you that marketing source. But we've been working very closely recently with our product team on this, because we do realize that it is a hot topic, and we do have the information to be able to share if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean,
that's our recommendation.
Yeah, and I suppose that's really interesting now, actually, in terms of a cookieless world or increasing cookieless world, if that has an impact, or as you say, how much it can be, based on legalities of having that included within kind of your bucket of necessary elements of the site. I suppose it's a bit of a kind of GDPR minefield and making sure you're on the right side of that. But yeah,
we don't capture anything kind of overly unique to the user, if that makes sense. We're not capturing name, we're not capturing address, we're not capturing anything like that at all. All we're capturing is your visitor journey online. And then obviously, ultimately, we then capture your caller ID. But again, we don't have any information with regards to addresses or anything like that. So yeah, from a data protection perspective, we believe that we can be put into like the vital kind of cookie side of things as opposed to.
And that's what you guys recommend in terms of the vital cookie elements that are vital to.
Yeah, I can't remember what exactly it's called in analytics, but essentially, yeah, yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, no worries.
But that kind of, yeah, to ensure that, you know, the cookie does, the code does fire as much as possible.
Makes sense.
There will always still be some that, yeah, that we won't be able to capture.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as you've got that fail safe, then that shouldn't be an issue, right? And if anything, you're making assumptions based on the data that you've got of a view of what they would have done on the site, right? So it's based on the, you know, the cohort of data that you've captured of those individuals. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. And that's what we're pushing out into, you know, the relevant marketing platforms to be able to, for the team to be able to optimize against.
Makes sense. And in terms of like how you work with other customers, where people convert over the phone versus if they're coming in from a contact us or a web form, how do you kind of recommend tying that information together? So, you know, you've got some indication of people coming in over the phone, and it might be a kind of a certain balance of marketing sources. That might potentially be different from people who are converting all the way online or coming through a web form contact. How do you kind of recommend balancing that for customers or your clients?
So we are very aware that, yeah, at the moment we kind of track phone calls. We do also now track form fills, and we're able to kind of stitch that together as well. But yeah, we are very aware that kind of in this omni-channel world, people do not kind of go a linear route at all. Like they'll be using live chat, they'll be using form fills, they'll then be phoning. But I guess that's where things like conversational analytics can be really powerful, because actually if you're looking, a lot of businesses don't kind of think that their online journey is great, and they don't really understand why anybody would need to call. And that's where conversational analytics can come into play, because you can really understand, okay, where are they struggling somewhere on the site? Are they, you know, what are the reasons for calling?
And do you tend for clients, do they normally take on the kind of the basic level of kind of call tracking with leads, and then tend to migrate to then have that pushed to their CRM and do conversion analytics at the end? Is there kind of a natural progression to...
There is a bit, yeah, there is a bit, because I think a lot of people who we work with, you know, they go from having no idea how, you know, things are performing, and so therefore being able to have an idea of just marketing sources, great, and then naturally that then leads on to, okay, cool, but actually, like, you know, were these actually good calls? We're getting a lot of calls through, but were they good calls? And then we then, as you say, integrate with CRM or start to be able to get the information that we rely on our customers to provide us, because they have it, and we say, okay, we can see that we had this call, you need to tell us whether it was, how much revenue was associated to that call, and you can start to build out that. And then I guess conversational analytics does tend to come kind of after that, because then it's like, okay, great, we've got all of this, but it's not potentially as strong as we were hoping it to be. Like, we're getting all these paid search calls through, but they're actually not converting, and actually we don't understand why they're not converting. So let's delve into the call and find out what's happening, like what are people saying? Because I think you could assume that potentially you're targeting the wrong audience, and might pull back on that, but on that particular ad group or whatever it might be, but without actually hearing the phone call, it's difficult to make that.
And that's really interesting, because I suppose you've got like a level of kind of quant analysis, but it doesn't necessarily tell you why, right? So then if you can then delve into why are those particular source of leads not converting, then you've got a little bit better understanding, and then you can adjust your comms or your channels appropriately in order to be able to make sure that you can, you know, course correct in that way. And yeah, I suppose it is a really interesting point, and we've definitely seen it, obviously working in different clients, around that view of lots of calls might not necessarily mean lots of decent leads, right? And the calls that you think, oh, it's a big volume play, might actually be noise in the system and potentially be distracting for your call center, which only has a certain period of time to have to answer calls or then follow up on other leads. So I think that's kind of interesting in itself. Do you tend to see, most clients have the information passing back into AdWords, or do you do it with other kind of platforms as well?
No, yeah, I'd say AdWords is definitely, one of the strongest points, because that literally does then allow you to build audiences off the back of that data. From an analytics perspective, we have both Adobe Analytics and Google Analytics integrations. So from that point of view, it depends. And then we also have a lot of integrations with people using Outbrain when they're doing display activity, or Facebook, or that we are able to start to provide information out to lots of different other providers as well. We kind of do it in two ways. We either a lot of it is APIs, as you know, so it's about putting that information out of Infinity and pushing it into somewhere else, or using an API to pull the information from one side and put it into Infinity. We kind of provide the data. It just depends where people want to view our data.
Makes sense. And I suppose it's sometimes this, the technology blows people's minds, right? And they just can't quite comprehend why there's so many different numbers on there. So I suppose it's interesting to understand how you get businesses to understand it in terms of the decision makers and senior stakeholders in an organization. I suppose it'd be interesting to hear that. And then on the second point would be, just from a user's perspective, if they go on a website and see a number flicker and then change to something else, is there still user acceptance of that, or is that cause any kind of issues from a kind of user journey?
So we hear that from customers sometimes, as in kind of clients, but we don't. I don't think they necessarily hear it from their customers, and I think it's purely because you're so used to seeing you're looking for it, right? I think when you actually go onto a site, it would be, we work with loads of different companies, so you probably never even noticed it before. You'd never even, realize that it is a flicker, and it really is a very, very quick flicker that we kind of dynamically replace the number with. And also, what happens if, for example, you do take that number down, or you've rung it and then you think, actually I want to call them back, and you just look at your log and call it back, then that's fine. That does work, and that will stitch together. So you don't have to. We never really hear. We hear the worry from kind of our clients sometimes about that, but in general, we'll say, let us know if you have any complaints about it, and we'll feed it back, and then we never really get much back. And I think it's because people are just so used to looking at their own site that they're watching it and they're waiting for it to flicker. On a kind of confusing point of view, it can get quite complicated, and that's why the best way to do it is what I've done today, and just literally show you. You go on the site, you search, you're presented with a dynamic number. If you went and did exactly the same as what I just did, you would get a different number. And then, as you know, we kind of have pools of numbers. So once that session is over, it then goes back into a pool, and then somebody else can potentially use that number. I think people get quite bogged down in what the dynamic number is, in the same way that you get bogged down in what a fixed number is. But actually, it's not necessarily about the number. The number isn't tied to a particular marketing campaign online. It's not anything to do with that. It's just a way of us capturing your information. It can get slightly confusing, but we do have a lot of guides to help you through that. And I never realized how many different versions of telephone numbers there were until I went to Infinity.
Do you think, as well, based on a business deciding to try or use call tracking, is there a certain threshold of numbers or volume of calls where you think it's kind of most valuable? Like, when does it get to a stage where, or is it a percentage of leads that tend to come over the phone rather over another customer touch point? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, but I mean, we don't have a threshold. We work with companies of all different sizes, and we have pricing to allow for that. So we have kind of anything from kind of small businesses right up to our enterprise accounts. So it really depends. Like, if you are running any marketing activity and you are directing people to a site and there is an obvious phone number that people potentially might call, then I would recommend implementing call tracking. You don't have to have, a great volume of calls coming through, and we do have a pricing structure to allow for kind of much smaller companies to be able to benefit from call tracking as well. It's also, if you are doing any, as I said, DM activity, leaflets or anything like that, one of the things that we do have the fixed number option as well, where you can set that up and view all of that data in one place. So I don't think there is a kind of cut-off point where call tracking becomes more important than other tracking. I think it should be something that you're tracking in exactly the same way that any digital activity you're doing, you would do proper tracking for.
Makes sense. I suppose we talked about kind of like, goals before. And you can have like goals based on kind of call duration, but ideally, you want to have a view of saying, are the calls kind of valid opportunities, and then kind of feeding that back into the system. Do you think kind of call duration is a good first kind of view of the fact that if they're having those conversations for a certain period of time, that equates to a decent goal, that then you would then spend more money on AdWords or kind of on any other kind of marketing campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So we as soon as anybody comes on board, we have kind of standard goals put in place, and one of them is what we call qualified call, and we put that at 60 seconds, but that's just a ballpark, that's just a starting point. And then we'll talk to anybody who we work with and say, does that make sense to you, or do you actually think that a qualified call for yourself is over 2 minutes or over 3 minutes? Like, what would you class as, how long does it take for somebody to get to a point where actually they potentially might convert? And that kind of depends on customer. But it starts to, again, it's like the beginning of understanding the calls and kind of segmenting them, because I think as people come on board, and great that they get all of this information, but actually there is quite a lot of data, like there is a lot of data that you can capture. So it's just a way of starting to segment it down. And then, you can then push that particular goal, as you know, into Google Ads and optimize against that. But as you kind of get a bit more sophisticated and we start getting more data in, like any CRM data, then actually, something like a call duration goal potentially isn't, worth much anymore. And actually you want to be looking at the goal with all your, good opportunities in, or whatever it might be. Your actual.
I suppose it's just the next step up after that, isn't it? But it gives you that idea. Okay, cool. So I suppose last question, it's got like a wider piece around call tracking. Do you think, calls with customers are kind of here to stay as a way of kind of, engaging? And do you think it's something powerful about having a conversation with the customer over the phone, which means that you want to try and have those phone numbers are available? Because I think some companies maybe shy away from it and try and encourage people to either go end to end online, or maybe to have a contact form rather than having a phone number. But good to know about the old telephone and how people actually.
I think, absolutely. I think the key is understanding making sure that you're having the good conversations on the phone, because we all know, like, even just from a work perspective, having a phone call or having a face-to-face is so much more kind of powerful than having just an email or having an online chat. I think we all still do that. If you're having a difficult conversation, you'll still pick up the phone and you'll have that conversation. Or if you want to get a feel for how somebody's, feeling, then you pick up the phone and you talk to them. So I think that's where, like, why we've moved in the way that we have with things like conversation analytics, is to encourage our clients to work with us, but actually work with us with their good calls, to understand their good calls and to understand them, to go out and get and find more of those. And we work with a lot of customers where we do initially start to look at their service versus sales calls, and therefore work with them with regards to a bit of a call deflection project and say, actually, you're getting a load of calls that are asking something you can put on the website, but they're not great calls. They're just asking for your opening times or whatever it might be. Like, you can put that on the website. But actually you're having these calls coming through where they need to be a bit nurtured, because they are leads. They are really looking to understand about you and the company and what you're about. So therefore keep hold of those ones. So, in answer to your question, I think there is definitely still room for calls in businesses. But it's about, ultimately getting more of the good ones through.
I think it's also,
and not spending money on the ones that are costing you.
Exactly right. And I think it's also just, if it's quite a complicated sale, so a lot of people kind of in this audience are kind of, from B2B, having conversations with customers when you need to speak to them with a complexity around it, it's far more likely that you're going to be able to do that over the phone as initial conversation, as opposed to any kind of level of kind of form or final completion online. So I think it's certainly important in the B2B context.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there is still still room for a phone call.
Sounds good. Right, I'll try and keep these sessions to 30 minutes. Thank you so much, Philippa. Excellent to discuss this point of view around call tracking. And we will see you on the next fortnight installment of Great Shouts. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.